doing. If at any point, if I cut out, just let me know because my internet is not that great. Thanks, George, for arranging this. As you've said, I thought it might be quite good to kind of give outline of what has been happening in terms of for people seeking asylum and refuge in Glasgow and generally in the UK, and kind of look at the increase of racism during the pandemic, but also on overall as well. For those of you who might not know, what has been happening, especially in Glasgow, is when the pandemic started at the beginning of March, many asylum seekers who were being housed by Mears, who is a private housing contractor by the Home Office, they were taken from their own hotel in their accommodation and put into hotels. And this happened at the very beginning of the pandemic, which anyone with some common sense and with normal mind would think that during a pandemic, a global pandemic, you would, you would be so much safer in your own accommodation, where you have your safety within the house and where you don't have to worry about coming close with somebody else. So sadly, more than 300 people were taken from their accommodation and put into hotels across the city. This was a huge outrage by the third sector, by activists, by campaigners, and by the people themselves, because they were given very limited time and notice to pack their stuff and move into hotels. And it's not just hotels where there are a few people, but some hotels have had up to 100 people, which opened just to house people seeking asylum. With this in mind, we raised a lot of concerns and issues, saying, people's mental health and physical health are not good at the moment. People might have some underlying condition. People might be feeling isolated and lonely. And to do this and to create further fear by putting into hotels, you're going to have people in so much more danger. And sadly, what we had seen then in May is in one of the hotels, we had seen one of the person there, Adnan, he sadly passed away. And until this date, they don't know why this happened. However, what we know is that he was moved from his home into a hotel during a pandemic, and we still ask all the campaigners, all the third sector, and everyone is still asking why he, including him and many others, why did people moved from their accommodation into hotels? Was there what sort of protection and health was taken when people were being moved into the hotels? And obviously there was huge complaints about the food that people were getting, the way that they were being treated in the hotels. Again, lack of awareness. There's so many questions which needs to be answered. And sadly, only a month and a bit later, we heard about the hotel incident that took place in Glasgow again, where in the incident, another person who was also seeking asylum also died. And again, this has been really frustrating because the person had raised the issue saying that they need support. They had raised the issue that they were feeling isolated and they might have been doing something. And again, this was not listened. And the way that adds the fear, and I think which is really scary, is the way that the media portrayed this, the racism, the discrimination of the incident, the way it was portrayed. Glasgow is known for its knife crimes. We know that on a weekly basis, sadly, that so many knife crimes takes place in our streets. However, the way that this incident was portrayed was horrendous by the media. When it was first initially happened, actually a few of the media outlets went far as to say that it might have been a terrorist attack. And there are again questions: is it because the person was an asylum seeker? Is it because the person was of a certain color? Is this why it contributed to the way it was outlets in the whole of the media? Serious questions, and still until this date there is no answers to it, which is the worrying part. It again seems to be another thing that's just going to be put under the carpet, where people suffered, a life is lost. And it's really worrying. And even after this, the way that the public, the general public, had reacted to this, I mean, you know, we shouldn't read the comment section after such incidents, but we do end up reading it. And the first things that we see is, what about our own people? What about our own homeless people? And they should be thankful that they're into hotels, and they should be thankful that they're getting food. And these are the same racist, same reasons that we hear, potentially created by the media and by the politicians over the many, many years, as we know, by the hostile environment, by Theresa May, and currently by Priti Patel. These are the myths that's just put out into the general public. And if there is poverty in your community, or if there's issues going on, as the politicians say, the first person or the people you turn around is the minorities, the asylum seekers, the refugees, the migrants, or whoever is within the community, because that's what the politicians want. They want to divide the communities rather than communities to unite and fight against such racist incidents, or to fight against actually the capitalist system that we have. And sadly, this is what we have seen over the few months. And recently, a few weeks ago, there was another incident where a mother was found dead in her flat. And again, until, you know, there's obviously investigations happening to behind this, why this happened, and would have been avoidable, or could there be anything else that authorities could have done to prevent this? It raises serious questions around it. So during pandemic, I would say life has not been easy for people seeking asylum and refuge. And obviously, then these are the things that happened in Glasgow. And on top of this, we also know what has been happening globally, starting from America with the murder of George Floyd, which affected and impacted across the communities, whether it didn't matter where you're from, or it didn't matter which community you're from, it affected everyone. And again, we had to be organised in that sense as well. Relating back to Stand Up to Racism, when this happened, what we have been doing is, nationally across the country, is we had been meeting on a weekly basis with the headline of Taking the Knee, so calling it Take the Knee, and uniting in different communities, raising awareness to talk about why this is still happening in our communities. Why is one community singled out? Why is it easy for the police and for the authority to single people out and to commit murder and kill people in front of our eyes? You know, it seems to be normalized, which is the really scary part. We should not be normalizing this, and we should not be saying this is fine. You know, it's just another life, or it's just another person. And this is my biggest worry, that the more cases that happens in our communities and across the world, the more we seem to normalize, and we should not normalize this, because it should not be normalized. Killing someone because of where they're from, because of their color, or because of their belief or gender or whatever, this should not be normalized. And that's where we all play a part in this, to organize and to raise awareness about the injustices that takes place. I mean, with Glasgow, like I said, we managed to organize ourselves across the city, so dividing into north, west, south and east, and actually created local groups to meet on a weekly basis, and take the knee in different locations, but also at locations where it's got a connection to slavery within the city. I mean, when you look at the street names across Glasgow, it all connects back to owners of big factories and big, you know, slave owners. So we tried to aim to have gatherings around there to at least to again raise awareness about the connection within the city that has in relation to slavery. One sad incident that had it, I seem to say there's a lot of sad incidents, and sadly this is what's happening, which again highlights the importance of unity challenge against racists and fascists. There was a group of people who actually claimed that they were claiming back George Square, so they actually came and they were gathering there, and it's like the most ridiculous thing ever, saying that we're protecting our statues, we don't want anything to happen to our statues. It's just ridiculous. It's like, if you had to potentially ask them, name one of the statue, they would have probably like just looked up and down, like probably not know nothing about it. But obviously then this is where the racists and the fascists find the gap to come outside and to say that, you know what, we are visible, we are here. And as anti-racist campaigners, as even just members of the community, we need to oppose this. Because the minute that we are not in the streets, the minute we don't organize against these people, then that's when we let the racist walk, and not even the racist, the fascist walks, and give them space to raise their voices. So there was a huge on a weekend gathering by the racists and fascists, and there was a separate protest organised by a group of people to highlight and raise awareness about the conditions asylum seekers were facing. And sadly, they were tackled by these so-called statue protectors, or whatever they call themselves. And it was an outrage because, you know, there was a group of just small number of people trying to raise awareness, and they became a huge conflict. And as a result of this, we, Stand Up to Racism, called a huge protest to say that, you know, to say refugees are welcome here, Black Lives Matter, and no to racists and fascists in our streets, which was a very successful gathering where we managed to gather everyone in a socially distanced methods and way, and to say that, you know, there's no place for racists and fascists in our streets. And the minute you come and say that this is our street, or we are trying to protect the statues, then you will have to face the anti-racists and the community of Glasgow against you. And I would say that, you know, it's so great to see that this is being organised across the country. And it's something that you wouldn't think of, because it's usually like Glasgow, I wouldn't say Edinburgh, but let's say Glasgow mainly doing it, and other big cities. So it's really great to actually see different parts of the country coming together to talk about this and to raise awareness about the issues that people are facing. We've got, well, the Stand Up to Racism, the National Committee are actually organising again another day of action on 19th of September. To say that refugees are welcome in our communities, to say that we say no to racism. And as most of you might know, that what we've seen yesterday at the Moria camp in Greece, in Lesbos, it's the biggest refugee camp in Greece, hosting over 12,000 people, and the capacity is only between 2,000 to 3,000 people. And sadly, the refugee camp was, we don't know, but I don't know why it got set on fire, but it got caught on fire, and people had to flee once again. And this raises again questions around what we can do in Scotland, what UK can do. You know, they are part of the international community. They do have, they are signatory to the UNHCR for the Refugee Convention, and every community in the countries have a responsibility to care after people and those who are fleeing from persecution, to welcome them. So I feel like, again, lots of questions that are out there that has not been answered. And I think it's really important what we can do as the local community, even for those who are within the community who has been housed by the resettlement, or who has moved there, or those who still face some sort of prejudices in within their communities. It's we as the little groups and other sorts of communities play a huge role into challenging this. I think I've covered a lot of things and I've talked a lot, so I'll pass it back to yeah, I can see a few people are like, yeah, you've talked a lot. Just joking. I'll pass it back to you, George, and then yeah, happy to answer any questions or comments, anything like that.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that. We'll not take any questions to Pinar just now, because Gurpreet has to go at 7:15. So if we go straight to her, and then if you save all your questions for after Gurpreet goes, and then we'll take any questions for her, but she needs to go bob on 7:15. So I'll let you introduce yourself rather than take your time up. And we'll see if we can work out sharing screens. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, Pinar, I was nodding because me and George we were texting about something technical. It was great to hear what you were saying, especially about the issues in Glasgow and, you know, the great work that's been going on there. Thank you. It's really nice to be here. I'm sorry I do have to leave early, but I will, you know, if questions are flowing, I can stay on an extra 10 minutes or so. Maybe we can push it to 7. So I don't know if any of you know about BLM in the Stix, if you've heard about it. If you have, just stick your hand up. If you haven't, that's okay. So a few people, great. So I, like many of you, was deeply upset by what happened to George Floyd. And as a result of that, I got involved in founding a local BLM group where I live. And I actually live in just outside of Colchester in Essex in a place called Wivenhoe. I actually grew up in Scotland. I lived in the East Nook of Fife and went to St Andrews for secondary. So Scotland's always felt a bit like home to me. So it's really amazing to see you all here. And what we did was we basically set up a local group, and because of lockdown, people were very nervous. I would say a lot of our community here are quite old, were shielding, you know, if you took away, we have like the University of Essex up the road, and if you took away all the university people, we're a bit of a retirement village, really. So a lot of people here were very nervous about getting together and protesting. So we had to think about what we wanted to do. And we actually set up several groups, one that looked at campaigning, one that looked at education, and another one that looked at arts and cultural events. But we also decided, as the lockdown eased, to do a riverside protest. And I had the idea that that protest could be a really nice way of sort of calling out other rural areas to stand up for BLM at that point, because it occurred to me that a lot of the BLM movement was happening in cities. And what's happened is that idea has accidentally spiraled into a national campaign. And what's happened is we kind of decided that we wanted to create this video, and I've got the campaign video if people want to see it. It's only a couple of minutes long. I could share that now if you want. But it's sort of sharing a couple of key messages. And what I stumbled across was that rural racism is really under-recognised. It's just not acknowledged. And there's quite a few reasons for that. And I've been looking into the research around it. I've been talking to people and academics around the country who've been researching it too. And the key reasons are that often the sort of local, and I use the terms white and people of colour just because it's easier, but I think, you know, both those terms are racialised. But, you know, in rural areas, usually the white community who have been living there a long time like to have this idyllic view of where they live, and that slightly stops them from accepting and acknowledging that there could be racism going on in their area. That's one thing. And what happens as a result of that is that they either deny that it exists. I mean, I had a case of racism where I live, which I told to a white friend who believed me, and then she went and told her other white friends, and they denied it. They said, no, there's no way that happened, you know. So that happens a lot. Or it gets downplayed. You know, people say, oh, it's just a one-off, you know, that doesn't happen all the time. Or there's diminishing culpability. People will say, oh, well, you know, you must have done something for that to happen. So that's the kind of 3 ways it can get shelved. And people don't want to have those discussions, you know, they're tricky. The other side of the coin is that, you know, people of colour in rural areas, when they undergo racism, because they don't often have, and because you're the minority, because you don't have a community around you who are experiencing that as well, often they tend to isolate from the community. So there's a lot of harm that comes from racism in rural areas, because what happens is people of colour can start to withdraw from community life and not feel welcome. And I actually know of a family here who've decided to move back to London because they are fed up with the microaggressions that they're experiencing. So all of that learning for me kind of made me want to create a campaign that raises awareness around rural racism. And we specifically want to, there's 2 main things we want to do. The first is create a campaign that talks to white people who are not racist, to become anti-racist. And I'm hoping all of you know what I mean by those two terms, because you're all activists. And I can explain it further if anyone wants to at the end. But the majority population in the UK is white, and the majority of them are not racist. So if they became anti-racist, we could see a real shift in this country. And it's not because we need to rely on white people. It's not because we need white people to be allies and rescue people of colour. It's because people of colour are in the minority. And if we could have changed it, we would have already. So my strategy is, let's get every single white person who's not racist to become anti-racist. And that's what we've been doing locally. You know, local people are talking to their family, to their friends, to people they know, and it's working. It is working. So what we've been putting out are some tools and resources around that, and there's a lot more we'd like to do. So that's one aspect of what we're doing, and the video backs that up, which I'll show you in a minute. The second thing we're doing is that we've recognised that the BLM movement has obviously been reignited, and what we want to do is create a network and a support base for organisations and individuals around the country who are doing anti-racism work. We want to strengthen what you're doing. We want to give you the resources and the skills and the tools to work more efficiently and be more effective, because there's a lot of practice that's going on. There are a lot of anti-racism organisations that have been around a really long time, have been doing this already, that we can learn from. And what I really want to do is try to help everyone to get, you know, not to all have to reinvent the wheel all over the place around the country. Let's learn from each other. Let's create a resource bank. Let's help each other. If one group has expertise in a particular area, they can share that with another. So that's the kind of two key things we're doing. What I've been doing around that, so my background is actually that I've worked in the voluntary sector for a really long time, and I've run my own consultancy for charities, and I've raised about 20 million for the sort of voluntary sector in the last 10 years, and that's been around sort of small, medium-sized frontline charities, lots of them BME groups. And so I understand like organisational capacity building and stuff like that. So I can easily see how local groups who might want to raise more money or establish into a local charity could do that. So we want to kind of provide all sorts of support, whether that's anti-racism training, whether that's fundraising, whether that's developing a group, whether that's dealing with the media, you know, getting more positive media stories out there, influencing policy. There's so many different ways you can fight racism locally. So we want to kind of create a range of resources that people can access. But we also want the network to help each other, and we can all learn from that. Because I'm no expert, I really am not. Like, I've kind of come up with an idea, people all like this idea, and the wind is behind us. So I want to kind of try and support as much as we can around the country. I'm going to shut up and show you the video if we can work that out. So I think, George, if you click on share screen, it should open up a white box, and then on there should be a little tick button, maybe at the bottom, that says enable share by other participants. It should be somewhere on there. I'm doing this from memory, so I might be wrong. If anyone else knows how to solve this, if you don't, what I can do is I can put a link actually to the video in the chat group. So if you guys copy it and maybe watch it after, if it's not going to work now.
No, I've just got the my screens that show.
Oh yeah, if you make me host actually for a minute, I can make you host again. That would work.
How do I make you host?
So if you go to my page, my face, and there's a little box that's got 3 dots on it. Oh, it doesn't, that's weird. Sorry.
You might not see the little dots, but if you've got...
No, it's not, it doesn't have that option. It must be something to do with the way the meeting was set up. Some things you have to enable before the meeting. Don't worry.
There you go, I'm making you the host.
Oh, you made me host. Brilliant. Let's see. I'm not sure that I am. Ah, yes, I am.
There's always the delay.
Right, here we go. Share this video. Can you see it? Is that all right? Okay, so this is speaking to white people in rural areas. Oh, actually, I need to share this sorry. I need to share the sound. There we go. Otherwise you won't be able to hear it. Okay, there we go.
Look at me how I am white. It's just my skin, what I was born with. I never knew it was a fearful thing. Look at me how I travel unopposed. I have never been stopped and searched for driving, for walking, for standing. It's just my skin, what I was born with. I never knew it was a passport. But look at me how my mind is made for knowing and has no excuse. And knowing is change. I am not good. I am only normal. I cannot mend everything, not by myself, but I can mend something. I am supposed to. That is a human obligation. That is the working of necessary love.
So that's the quick video we made. And yeah, that kind of gets across the campaign idea. So what I've been doing, and I'm supported by a team of people local to me, but obviously launching a national campaign requires a hell of a lot of skills. So we've been reaching out. We were lucky to get a lot of press attention. So online, you can access us at BLM in the Stix on social media. And we have a link tree as well, which at the moment, because we don't have a website at the moment, but this has got all of the resources and all of the press coverage that we've had so far. I've just put that in the, actually, let me do it to everyone, sorry. I've just put that in the chat, the link tree. And there's all sorts of resources on there. Like we've created a leaflet, which is like an anti-racism guide for white people that we've actually we've provided it as a printable PDF. So if you want to get it printed, you can share that with people. But there's other resources that we're getting together, how to write a press release. And what I've done is we've had about 40 different regions get in touch with us, including George, who invited me here today as a result of that. And I've sent out a survey to find out what people want help with and how they would like that help delivered. And if anyone would like to contribute to that, it was meant to close at 5 o'clock today, but if you do it tonight or tomorrow morning, I'll close it at say 11 AM tomorrow. So if you follow that Linktree link, it will give you the survey on there. So feel free to contribute there. And on there as well, we've got some meetings going on next week, which we're doing with the regions as well. So if you do the survey and you want to join in with one of those meetings, just elect a meeting and we'll be in touch with you to sort that out. And what I want to do is take all the information we're learning, some of which is that people really are experiencing racism mainly in their community through microaggressions, and they want support with that. People want help with influencing policy, influencing counsellors, influencing the community. They want anti-racism training. They want help, they want advice on and support in how to support their BME groups. Because, you know, even if you don't do a protest, even if you don't change policy, even if you don't, storm the local council, like even just supporting local BME groups is anti-racism work. You know, if you just volunteer some time for a BME group, if you do a fundraiser for them, like the research shows that BME groups in rural areas are so neglected because the voluntary sector, a lot of the money for the voluntary sector goes into cities, and then what's left goes to rural areas, and in rural areas BME groups get the least amount of money. And what happens is they end up doing some socializing activities and organizing themselves to do that, but they never have the resources or the time or the money to actually do any campaigning work or have a voice. So if you can help them to have a voice, if you can help them to get resources so they can spend their time doing other things, that's a massive boon in terms of anti-racism work. Another thing you can do is make sure that the media, that you're in touch with them, that they're putting out positive stories about people of colour. That's a massive area. So as well as that, what I've been doing is actually sort of trying to find people that can join an expert panel. because I've realized that in order to provide this work, we need a whole range of skills. And one of the things, sadly, that I've experienced already with a group in Sandbach, which is sort of in the sort of east of the country, up from the Midlands, is my geography is terrible. Everything's like top left, top right. They have done a protest. They've had a massive right-wing, alt-right, clash, and that's going to happen if we, it's already happening. Some of you may have experienced it in their particular area. There's a group called the Patriotic Alternative that's growing. Instead of the British National Party, they've started flyering the whole area. So what we want to do is make sure we've got the right skills and the network to provide support around that. So I've managed to get an academic who's been researching rural racism and hate crimes. He's head of criminology at Leicester. I've got someone who founded the Stop Funding Hate campaign, if anyone knows that. It's a social media campaign that encourages advertisers not to put adverts in the Daily Mail and those other fairly racist rags. They've got over 200,000 followers. He's joined. We've got a detective who's at the Met unit, at the police and the discrimination unit. We've got various diversity trainers and, sociologists who've been sort of researching this stuff. We've got someone who works in global events, but in global education events, and has amazing links with celebrities and brands and delivering education and training in an innovative way. And we've got someone from Amnesty who works in human rights. Like, we're really picking up some really interesting people for the network. So what I'm planning to do is, once we have these meetings next week, take all that learning to the expert panel, sit down with them and say, right, what should we deliver? How do we deliver what people need? What would this look like? And then what I want to do is take that plan, which will be a short, kind of 1 year plan, which then I will bring back to you guys and the network, whoever wants to see it, and just run that by everyone and see if that's what you want us to be doing. So it's community led, and then I'm going to go away, cost it up and try and find some money for it. There's already a few philanthropists and major donors that might be interested. We can definitely go for like funding, which, for me, I really want to funnel down as much as I can in terms of resources and support. So that's the rough plan. I mean, I also have 2 jobs, so this is just what I've been doing in my free time. And it's been amazing. I mean, it's been amazing to meet and talk to so many brilliant people, and to meet people like you who want to do something. So I'm really hoping that as an idea, it will give everyone a place to go for support and know that you're not alone, because a lot of another thing to tell you all briefly is from the research is that what happens in an area is usually someone will become very active. They'll become a big voice for inclusion or diversity or whatever their issue is. In this case, anti-racism. And what happens is they get pulled onto every board. Everybody wants a bit of them, and they become their local champion, but they get absolutely burnt out. And what happens is they collapse and the movement collapses, and that's been shown again and again. So we want to kind of, look at the research and try and help people around the country to not fall into those same pitfalls that have happened before, and try and help you to kind of create a movement that's sustainable, that's strong, that you have the emotional and social support that you need, because this is hard work, and it's lonely, and it can be really isolating. And, we know that. So that's kind of what we want to provide.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I know you've got to dash off, so we were going to go to like contributions from different groups. I can see Pinar's got a hand up. So, but I was going to say, if there's any questions specific to you, and then we'll move on to contributions from different parts of the very top of Scotland. So Pinar, do you want to?
It was actually the clapping emoji that was really good.
Oh, right.
Oh, thanks. That's very kind of you. And we need to hook up, Stand Up to Racism nationally. We need to hook up, because you're really based in cities, and we've got Stand Up to Racism in Colchester, and quite a few people who've running that have been helping me with the social media campaign. So on a local level, we've been working on it, but as a national level, we probably need to hook up. just a couple of things to leave you with. I mean, you know, do join us on social